Welcome to One Man's Trash, the podcast about collecting everything. I'm your host, Levin Parker, and this is my co-host.
I'm Michael Cortese of Noble Spirit.
Appreciate having you here, Michael. And we're
Of course.
talking today to a man who is a vintage jewelry dealer and actually has billed himself online as more of a Willy Wonka vibe than Dior. And he's amassed almost 200,000 followers on TikTok doing it. I'd like to welcome Jack from Mureta and Company.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you again, Jack. I know we collabed a little bit on a video in the past. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about, how you got started in vintage jewelry and what your experience has been with it?
Sure. Yeah. I started in the industry as a kid, very, very young. I actually have the first piece. I was just about to grab it. First piece I ever bought. I had it framed. It's
Oh,
a
wow.
little 14 karat gold Maria charm. I bought it when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old,
Mhm.
um, in a garage sale for 10 cents. It was in those little capsules you get at the grocery store where they have little toys in them. You put a quarter in.
Yep.
They had it in one of those little capsules. I was like, that's a gold charm. Why is it 10 cents. So I bought it, had to borrow a nickel from my dad, and I kept it. So that kind of led me on this journey into the industry where, treasure hunting became a weekly activity and then very quickly turned into a business. In my early teens, I started to flip scrap gold, scrap silver. And
Mhm.
then I started selling on eBay as well. So I was selling on eBay in 1999, 2000, when people were like
Yeah.
just starting out. Like,
Mhm.
it was really cool. It was really fun to be early on eBay, and like as a kid especially being able to sell stuff to adults, and they don't know I'm doing it, but it's a cool energy to be able to do that as a kid.
One of
And
my,
then it grew into a big business.
sorry, one of my favorite videos of yours is you had this whole bag of gems that you had gotten from when you were a teenager and you were scrapping out and you're going through and like critiquing your own pick through of what you had originally gotten. And I just thought that was so cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought
No,
that was
totally.
a neat
I,
way.
I actually I love doing that because a lot of the times with my collection, as I accumulate stuff, it gets kind of lost in the hoard, and
Hmm.
I'll have to reassess it years later. And oftentimes, when you reassess something, either you'll see something that you missed because you weren't experienced enough. Like
Hmm.
I've missed really important sapphires in my own collection just because I didn't know about them fully yet. And there are things that I thought were really special that I ended up giving away to kids because I was like, oh, it's junk. What was wrong with me? You know, it's a collecting can really it can really flip you over on your head, you know, as you progress
Hmm.
and really become an expert. It confuses you constantly, I've
Yeah,
noticed.
yeah. That rings so true. I mean, that relates heavily to
Yeah.
I can relate heavily to that. So I saw it in the website, on the About Me page. You talked a lot about coming into the business and that you were mentored from an early age. Do you mind talking a little bit about that mentorship? Because I feel that that's,
Yes.
one of the building blocks for collectors in the future is
100%.
mentorship's a huge,
100%.
yeah.
100%. I was mentored very fortunately at a very young age in the flea markets I went to by a man named Mark Barnes, who he's not the original owner of the store. This is an earlier mentor.
Hmm.
And he set up with a little gem booth. Literally, it was probably like a 18-inch by 12-inch showcase. That's all he had. And he just had really nice opals, really nice tourmalines, and a few other rare gemstones. And I would always stop by his booth and talk to this guy as like an 8, 10-year-old for like an hour and a half, just harassing him for
Wow.
information. And he would send me on little tasks to like go out to the market and be like, okay, I've showed you how to identify tourmaline. I want you to go in the market, find a piece of tourmaline jewelry, buy it, and bring it back. And he
Hmm.
would send me on these missions to go and find stuff. So I would go and find tourmaline rings. I would go find a sapphire and then bring them back. And he trained me that way to like go and like hunt for it. And then that kind of just honed my eye. And
Incredible.
it was, yeah, I got very fortunate, very, very
Yeah.
fortunate in my early years. Because most of the time, a kid comes to your booth, you're just going to be like, hey, here, have some fun rocks, go away.
Hmm.
I mean, as nice as you can be. But he really did. I think he saw that I actually had a deeper interest and couldn't understand the rocks a little, and
Hmm.
wanted to help me. And thankfully, he spent a lot of time helping. And I had mentors my entire career. I had another mentor who ended up officiating my wedding. Bill Whetstone, William Whetstone. He wrote the World Hallmark books, which I highly recommend you check them out if you have any interest in silver, golds, any hallmarking. But I mean, brilliant man who owned gem mines, had multiple. He was working in multiple industries, writes books. He's a scholar. He's just wonderful, and he just was so open with knowledge. And I think that really inspired me as well to be open with my knowledge because it really felt like
Yeah.
imparting that. Having that imparted to me was so invaluable, and it was free.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the fact that I found TikTok and I have a platform where I can give away the knowledge that I've accrued is so like thrilling because it feels like I can mentor a bunch of people without, having to exclude anyone,
Yeah.
And
you
and
know.
Well,
I
I mean,
I
it's
100% feel the same way about that. Like the ability to spread what you love out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because everybody had that mentor, and I know I had one where originally I was just doing like checklist of post offices and stuff I would collect, and then I had somebody sit me down and talk to me about quality and how to assess the overall beauty of an object, and it was really just life changing for me, and the chance to watch somebody else go through that's amazing, and I think that's one of the things I wanted to ask about is so often in the jewelry business, people talk about the bullion value and the carat value, and when does it cross that line from not being about the just the pieces themselves, but being about
Mhm.
a piece of art, being a piece of collection?
That's a tough question. Um, I would say that for something to be considered in jewelry a piece of art, it would need to be a limited collection and/or a handmade piece.
Mm.
I prefer, for me to say an art piece of jewelry, I would consider it either high design, limited collection, or individually handmade items, just because
Mm.
the amount that you can mass produce,
Mhm.
I think, limits the ability to call it art instead of manufacturing. Especially when it comes to like, chains, rings. I mean, a lot of designs are derivative of other designs that are derivative of other designs, and it's all kind of replaying just a 10 to 20-year span of history in the jewelry industry over and over again, you know, with a slight modification. Truly, you can find there's a halo of diamonds with a colored stone in the center in 1880s. There's a halo of diamonds with a colored stone in the center in the 1960s, and
Mhm.
it's the exact same halo with some minor variation and like
Hmm.
a little more bold maybe. That's it, and they just repeat themselves. So it's hard to really call it art, but when there are artistic jewelers who are doing truly artistic things that are unique and individual and it's one off or maybe a small collection, that's artistry. I have some pieces like that I can show you actually if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll grab them.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you one of an example where I would consider it artistry because even though it is from a big house, it was a very limited run by a specific designer.
Hmm.
This is my personal piece.
I've
It's
seen that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's grotesque. It's fabulous. So it's by Donald Claflin, and he made this while working at Tiffany and Company in the late 1960s. This piece originally was a clasp for a bracelet, so it would have like a little thing that holds on to here, and it was just worn on the wrist. It
Interesting.
it broke
Yeah.
when my client was wearing it, and the designer decided to convert it into a fur clip for her and add the tongue. So it still has
Mm.
the hinge as a clasp that can bite, but just an incredible piece of workmanship. Very limited collection. They probably made 50 of these, maybe,
Wow.
and I consider that a piece of art because it's completely individual from any other jewelry you'll see. There's nothing else like this.
Hmm.
You know,
And
it's that's art to me.
And so would that have a significant multiplier in value? I mean, can you make money buying things at bullion value and recognizing exceptional
Oh my
people?
God, yes.
Yeah.
You can make so there's so many different ways to make margin buying jewelry over the counter that there's like stacking multipliers practically. Like your base margin when you're buying scrap gold, if you're really fair, you're making 10%.
Mm.
And that's like you're the most fair buyer in town. You're making 10%. If you're
Wow.
paying too much, you're making 10%. And I'm not talking about bullion. I'm talking about scrap gold.
Yeah.
Bullion,
Hmm.
you make 1%. You make 30
Right.
bucks on an ounce, 50 bucks on an ounce, maybe. Um, But if you're buying scrap gold, your base margin's at least 10% if you're a really fair buyer.
Mhm.
And then it goes up from there. If anything's usable, you can resell it for at least 2 to 5% over the spot price, which, you lose on the melt as well. So there's another 1.5%, 2% there to factor of loss from melting versus selling it as a piece. Um, and then, yeah, if you find a piece like this, I mean, the signature on this, I don't know if you probably can't, you probably won't focus, but it's very difficult to read. It's under a peg because it was converted from a different piece, and he had to add a peg for the tongue to attach.
Mhm.
So technically, it's a Tiffany piece. It's an altered Tiffany piece. If you didn't see that signature, the other buyer in town, I spoke very extensively with the owner. We ended up becoming friends. The other buyer in town that this was offered to offered $3,500 for it.
Wow.
Mm,
Yeah, 3,500, just the material value, diamonds,
right.
platinum, and gold.
Wow.
Didn't see the mark because the other thing was because she was wearing it as a pendant. You see this mechanism here? These are pokey. So she had wax, like a museum putty, covering that, and it kind of was
Hmm.
like covering this whole section here. So it kind of almost covered the signature completely as well. So he didn't even see the signature. I cleaned it, saw the signature, paid her 10 grand for it very happily,
Mm.
Wow.
and you know
What would you value it at? I mean, and I know it's tough with pieces
It's very hard. Yeah. So if this wasn't an altered piece, I could put a pretty accurate value on it because it was altered and it's the only one that's been altered.
like
Mm.
I'm never selling it. I'm my
Right.
my rule my rule is with this piece is I'll trade it for a house in the neighborhood so I don't have to commute to work. Like that's it. Um, which I don't care how nice the house is as long as it's walkable.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if it were unaltered, um, minimum these things sell for an auction for similar pieces 20, 30,000
Wow.
minimum,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Interesting.
And I bought a lot more from her. A lot of her pieces were damaged and altered, unfortunately. So it's really hard to put a value on them until they get repaired. But yeah, more art pieces. This piece is by a
So,
local.
oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, for a lot of rare covers or stamps or coins, there's a census. People know how many were issued, and people may know how many are accounted for. So you said there's 50 of those, approximately. Are they accounted for, or
Um,
um,
so
do they ever build a census?
jewelers don't keep track of, I mean, they keep track of how many they sold.
Hmm.
But there's no telling how many are still in existence. It's the same with stamps and all that.
Yeah.
A stamp can burn, it can get water
Hmm.
damage, it can get thrown out. Um, Same kind of thing. A piece of jewelry can get melted because it was inherited by the wrong person. They don't realize it's a good piece. They go and they scrap it, and then
Mm,
it just gets destroyed. So I don't know the exact numbers of these that sold, but it was expensive in the 1960s,
yeah.
and it's a very specific collection. I'm estimating in that range. From what I've seen in auction, it's very unusual that Claflin's work even comes up. So I haven't seen this piece come up in auction ever. Um, I've seen other similar pieces sell in auction, but only once every 10, 15 years. So I know they're
Wow.
exceptionally rare. They're
Wow.
exceptionally rare pieces.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly how many exist,
And I want
unfortunately.
to get back to the show and tell, but I have a quick question because
Yeah.
it's interesting in really high end postal history. I would say that at least 50%, if not well more, because I'm not part of that exact world, moves dealer to buyer. That there are known top end buyers, there's known top end dealers, and there's a lot of stuff
Hmm.
that never sees the light of day.
Yeah.
Is that true in jewelry as well, where you have a really dealer dominated marketplace?
There's a it's such a it's a much bigger market, I think, than stamps. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot more jewelry around
Oh, yeah.
and there are a lot more buyers around. So I think the distribution is probably a little more even.
Mm.
But still, there are some key buyers and key auction houses that get the majority of the best stuff. Like Sotheby's and Christie's end up getting the majority of the good jewelry.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Bonhams as well. And then there's some key dealers who end up buying. Harry Winston buys a lot. Lawrence Graff buys a lot. Any big diamonds that are important colored diamonds, Graff is going to bid on them. Harry Winston's going to bid on them. I know a couple people who would also bid on them. I won't be bidding on them. anytime soon. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, the more money you have in the field, the more you can purchase. As long as you get your backing, you can dominate it.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's about money though. It's really about
Yeah.
money. It's about money, and there's a little bit of about trust. If but amongst dealers especially, it's more about just if you have the cash, you have the cash, and you have the best offer.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that one of the very first reasons I ever spoke to you is I had seen an auction of rings, and it was from Christie's or Sotheby's. I don't remember what, but they were ancient Roman rings, and they were like, I mean, 2, 3 thousand years old, and I was blown away that they were going like 1,500 to
Yeah,
$7,000, and
cheap.
it was dozens of them. I mean, and they were all carved stone, just incredible pieces of history, and
Yeah.
I'm shocked how inexpensive they were. From like that historical aspect, what would you say would be areas of jewelry collecting that you really think are intriguing, as far as value goes?
Mm. You mean being undervalued or having just
Being a good buy, something
a
something
good
that
buy?
that's cool to value factor you think is really fair, whether it be high end or low end.
That's hard. I think that mid-century Tasco jewelry right now is undervalued from Tasco, Mexico.
Okay.
TAXCO. Um, when I was a kid selling that stuff, it was selling for more in the 2000s than it sells for now, significantly. Like a necklace I would have sold for 3,500 in 2005 is now selling for 1,200, $1,000, and it's still as good in design and still as I think important historically for design in the 20th century as other important like Danish silversmiths and, any other movements that were happening at the time. I think they're just as important, just as dynamic, and right now undervalued.
Hmm.
Um, aside from that, I would say there's definitely a thing where as trends come in and out, if you buy the opposite of the current trend, you're always getting a great value. So, like
Hmm.
right now, yellow gold is really in. So, any white gold or platinum, people are kind of like dumping it. They don't really care. They're not selling it very aggressively. So, that's the market where if you're buying Art Deco stuff or Edwardian stuff that has, platinum heavy, white gold heavy, etc., you'll probably find better deals there.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's all very
Interesting.
cyclical. Same with Native
Yeah.
American jewelry right now. Like it's in the 1980s, it was super hot. Like there were squash blossom necklaces that were $8,000, six
Oh, I
thousand
I
dollars.
remember it's Wyoming. They had
Yeah,
it's
totally.
crazy at like low,
Yeah.
and people would buy that stuff. I mean, it would just get snapped up.
Now, dead. Market's dead. You can pick up a nice squash blossom. I was buying them for scrap a few years ago. Silver, like 200 bucks for the silver. Not for like the top ones, but a nice, decent, should have been $2,500 in a retail store. I'm buying it for 200 in my, silver because no one wants them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But in 5 years, some celebrity's going to put one on, rock it with a cool leather jacket or something, and everyone's going to want a squash blossom.
Yeah. On the other side of the coin, do you see anything that's trendy right now that you just don't really get the appeal of, or don't?
Oh my God, yes. Puffy gold, hidden halos, um, very, very hollow, like wax filled jewelry that just looks, I mean, it's like, those old candlesticks, those silver candlesticks where they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, those little squat ones that are like filled with wax and they're like thin
Hmm.
sheets of silver. They're doing that with jewelry now and filling it with wax. And it's like,
Huh.
it's so cringy. Um,
And that's what puffy gold is. It's like filled with.
so normally it's just hollow.
Okay.
But in the 19th century, late 19th century, in England, they did it as well. And I just bought a bracelet it's in my scrap that has it has wax filling, and
Mm,
they reintroduced that recently. It's not the same material. It's more of like a plasticky kind of wax where it's harder,
right.
but it really is a pain in the ass, and you can't scan for it when you're buying scrap. So when you're buying it, it's hard to like you have to cut stuff
Oh,
up. You have to
Mhm.
wow.
like, or you have to know what it feels like, you
Right.
know. and there's a
It
certain
almost
feel
seems
for sure.
somewhat dangerous to uneducated buyers and the or people
Very.
coming in because they might be thinking they're getting a lot more than they really are.
Yes, absolutely. There's actually someone brought in a couple months ago, no, over a year ago now. They brought in a braided necklace that
Hmm.
the only significant parts of gold were the fittings and the chain connecting the fittings, because the braided gold itself was paper thin and it was braided over a thick rubber tube.
Oh,
Mm,
And the thick rubber tube was majority of the weight. The entire thing, I think, weighed 23 grams, and the
mm,
actual gold was like 3.5 or 4 grams.
wow.
wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, they didn't pay as if it was solid.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They thought they got a great deal,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
but in actuality, they paid, I think they paid $750 for it, and it's, $250 in gold, $200 in gold now.
Yeah.
Right. But those are made as kind of just designer pieces, not made to fool anyone.
Yes. Yeah. No, they're usually made just to have a nice look, and be a good price point. But it happens very often that people will buy these things not understanding that they're hollow, or
Right.
that they're not having,
Right.
they don't have a solid gold item. And I mean, sure, you could say that the consumer should understand the value difference, but most consumers don't
No.
at
Yeah.
all.
No,
Like,
that's
Well,
yeah.
that's
I mean,
that's
that's
part of the professionalism of being a dealer. I mean, you would
yeah.
that's I think there's a big part of trusting the dealers you talk to,
absolutely.
to the point where I only deal almost exclusively with guys that I personally feel like are going to shoot me straight, because you
Yep.
reach a point at the upper end where everything is so unique and different, and you just can't know everything, and you have to deal with people that are really honest and fair.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And occasionally you'll get a dealer in there. I've noticed that, or at least for me, I've noticed that, even if they're not necessarily the best at what they do, as long as they'll honor their word in
Hmm.
the deal,
Mhm.
that matters more. Like, they don't have to be the best dealer, they don't have to be the most educated dealer, as long as they're willing to honor the deal properly. If they say it is what it is, and they honor it,
Mhm.
that's all you really need. Um,
Yeah. Well, excuse my ignorance here, but for stamps, there's the American Philatelic Society. For coins, there's the ANA. Is there anything for jewelers or jewelry dealers where a society where they can join that kind of helps protect them in a way? You talked a little
mm,
bit about dealers honoring their products and honoring standing behind everything,
yeah.
but is there something that holds them other than just the community to a higher standard?
There are definitely boards, like there's the JBT, Jewelers Board of Trade. There are other boards like that that are in place to enforce, you know,
Yeah.
contract and stuff like that if someone has a bad deal. But
Hmm.
um, I would say they are significantly less efficient than the market itself taking care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Interesting.
the
Interesting.
especially if it's, I mean, there have been times where I've seen a dealer take advantage of somebody and get ostracized by the entire jewelry community
Right.
within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow. That's
dead,
fast.
dead, like gone.
Look.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where you just, if you're willing to do it to one person, then
Yeah.
they just know you're not safe. We're not going to work with you. And then once that happens to you, there's a select group that will still work with you. It's very small, and frankly, it's not worth it to risk your reputation, because
Interesting.
you lose, let's say 80-90% of your buyer and seller pool
Yeah.
Hmm.
overnight.
It's that close-knit of a community to the point where within
Yeah.
24 hours, someone's
I mean, it's all online.
entire wow.
Yeah, like, I mean, I was on a forum. I got banned, but I was on a forum. I'll tell you why I got banned later. I was on a forum, JHJ, Jewelers Helping Jewelers, which it's an
Mhm.
international forum. There's jewelers from all around the world, but mostly United States. And there's 30,000 people on there.
Mm.
Mhm.
So, if I make a post on there and it's an important post and it gets seen by a lot of the members, that's 20, let's say 20,000 of the members see it. across the
Hmm.
country. That's hitting every single state, every single city,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Almost every single, like, not every store, but it'll get around. I mean, it's going to get
Yeah.
around quickly.
No,
But the
that
most
that's
important
understandable.
areas, yeah, the most important areas are like, the main trading centers, New York, 47th Street, Fifth Avenue, and that section, and then like Chicago, LA. That's where it spreads the quickest and where it needs to spread the quickest.
Mm.
Like people will know the next day if someone got scammed on 47th Street. That they will know.
Wow.
As long as it's public knowledge, as long as it's being available, the knowledge is available, it will be spread within a day.
Hmm.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into something I was going to ask about, and I wasn't sure how to approach it. Is I know that you've gotten big into lab grown diamonds recently, and I was wondering if at the beginning of that anybody got caught pulling hinky stuff with lab growns before they became super common and super available. I mean, was there anybody that was early to the market that got in trouble trying to do
Oh
that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There are people getting in trouble doing it now. Like there are
Mm.
still people selling lab stuff as natural. There are still people trying to sell lab stuff as natural to dealers with fake GIA reports. Like all that kind of stuff happens all the time. It's
Wow.
because the thing is, the equipment necessary to differentiate between the lab and the natural stones now is no average dealer has it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like to truly 100% say, I know for certain this one is natural and this one's synthetic. It's a $20,000 instrument.
Wow.
Most jewelry stores are not going to have it. And then you have to have the experience to know how to read the readout from the instrument as well in order to decipher. So,
I
So
recently
with the price, oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to ask, with the price difference between them, you kind of just have to take a lot of this, if it doesn't come with a certificate on faith, um, essentially to by what the dealer's saying.
yeah, to an extent. If they're selling lab grown, there's no reason to sell, you know, fake lab growns because they're lab grown. So,
Right. Right.
but if it's a natural diamond, yeah, I mean, I've seen fake GIA reports. I've seen perfectly replicated stones that replicate the GIA report symmetry perfectly with similar inclusion patterns to the GIA report that's fake, but has a real report connected to it. So you can look it up online and you can find the correct
Wow.
plot and find the correct proportions in the same millimeter, et cetera. And it's the same stone, but it's a lab grown version of it.
The price difference is really that significant that it's worth going through all that
Oh,
trouble.
yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So
So,
why
um,
is it just because lab growns are so new to kind of the
there's an
yeah,
example. So
yeah.
that bracelet, these are a carat each.
Okay.
Hmm.
And these stones in natural would cost me 8,000 per stone.
Wow.
Yeah, 36 stones.
Yeah.
And this entire bracelet I retail for 9,500.
Wow.
Oh goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's significant.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
that was
why.
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
actually I had seen a report on it was an NPR report where they bought a lab grown diamond off of Alibaba and
Mhm.
took it down to GIA and everything, and it's a 1 carat lab grown diamond, $137.
Yep.
Obviously, that's even underneath what wholesale market is now. But it's got to have some sort of downward pressure on the overall diamond price. And I've seen a couple of creators that do jewelry. Trax New York comes to mind, even though he's definitely not one of my favorite creators. But he has
It's
all these charts where he's like it's maintaining its standard as far as value goes for natural stones, and I just find that really hard to believe.
it's not true.
Okay.
So, um, that's why it's hard to believe. The market has been dropping for natural diamonds every year since lab has been introduced, especially for smaller stones under 5 carats, 3 to 5 carats. The market has been dropping. There was an
Mm.
uproar in the early parts of the pandemic because Rappaport, which is the big diamond price list, was dropping was dropping prices, and all the diamond dealers were like screaming at him, going, "Why are you doing this? It's a pandemic. This is why it's happening. It's not. It has nothing to do with the lab grounds. It's just because of the pandemic." And he says, "Look, I'm just giving you guys the prices that are from records. This is just I can't change these.
Yeah.
Like I'm not
Yeah.
going to manipulate the market because you don't like the market. This is so it's the reality. The prices have been dropping. They're not natural diamonds, especially on the secondary market. The softness in from the buyers is the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Normally, like 10 years ago, before lab grown, if you had a nicely cut natural diamond, you would expect to get, let's say, a perfect stone. You would expect to get 38 back of wrap. If it's close to the carat, let's say it's a 105 or 110, 1 carat 10, you would expect to get 38%, 40% back of wrap, which is the retail price. Now 55, 65 back, 70 back for nice stones. Like they're paying nothing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so to translate that to dollars, like a stone you would sell for 5,000, you're getting offers for 1,800 or 2,000, that kind of thing. It's under half.
Do you think that will continue? I mean, because you say smaller stones, but a 3 carat diamond
It's
is
not small. No, it's not
that,
small.
that feels
When
like
I
a
say
massive stone.
when I say small stones,
Okay.
when I say small stones, I mean from a collector perspective,
Yeah.
not
Okay.
from a consumer perspective. So
All
small
right.
stones from a collector perspective, for diamonds, for white diamonds especially, for rarity, they're not that rare.
Yeah.
So when you want a rare white diamond, you're going to need to be 10 carat, 15 carat, 20 carat plus. That's a rare white diamond.
Okay.
So that's when they start to become harder to acquire, harder to find, and even harder to replicate in lab.
Mhm.
The lab stones, they can get up to 80 carats, but they're very expensive up there. And once you go past 10, 15 carats, they get pricey again because it's just hard to grow them. The machinery, you need a different machine. And the other machine's significantly more expensive, much larger. So
But that under 3 carat though feels like the entire retail market.
yes, that's the thing.
And so like
The
that.
entire consumer market is going
I
lab
mean,
now.
I mean that's I can't even imagine what it's like owning stock as a jewelry store owner, much less being like a major chain of jewelry stores. I mean, I can't imagine how you adjust for that kind of differentiation for what you already have in stock, plus what you're going to be able to get out of it. I mean, it's just, have you seen a lot of turnover in the industry because of that?
I would say I personally am very fortunate in that I've never liked diamonds. I've never really purchased diamonds. I've always been into colored stones and vintage pieces. So it didn't hit me much at all. But I have a lot of friends who are heavy in diamonds who, I mean, I don't want to say that they're like thinking of ending it all, but some of them have been pretty close. Like I have friends who lost half their net worth in 2 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and they didn't have small net worths. They happened to be in smaller stones, Melly mostly. Like they were producing tennis bracelets, producing stud earrings, everything under like a carat. So all of their stones, especially, because if you have the option to buy a tennis necklace that will retain no value regardless of if it's natural or lab, practically, there's no reason to buy the natural version. You're just losing more
Right.
money for no reason. And people
Right.
understand that. The consumers understand that for the most part. They're not buying tennis necklaces in natural anymore. They're buying them in lab.
Yeah.
The bracelets, are buying them in lab. It doesn't make sense. Engagement rings, it's still, sometimes people want the natural. Mostly it's lab. Truly.
Do you think
So
that'll continue to slide? I mean, do you
yeah,
think that it's bottomed out yet, or do you think we're close?
the pricing is very close to bottomed out. I've seen initially when it like first year versus second year, labs dropped by well over half. Like um, they went from being a percentage of wrap, the list price, to being price per carat, versus, which is a huge difference. It's like, a 1 carat was maybe $1,500 going down, transitioning down to being 300 a carat,
Wow.
that kind of thing in a year and a half. But there's a certain cost of energy, there's a certain cost of cutting the stone, a certain cost of production on the jewelry. So a finished diamond per carat, I don't think can really bottom out and finished, produced, ready to
Right.
set for less than like 75 a carat, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Because I mean, it takes energy to grow. Someone has to cut it. It has to be produced. Um,
Yeah.
but that's kind of it. And that's pretty much that's kind of where we're at. We're very close. Unless energy gets cheaper. I mean, when I buy like a pair of studs, the diamond factor value of the 1 carat each studs, um, I'm paying $100 a stone maybe. And the rest of it is the settings, you know.
Same.
Wow, that's really kind of, I was thinking about the comparison between lab grown diamonds and, cultured pearls,
Mm,
essentially. And reading earlier that almost like 99% of pearls sold globally are cultured pearls. And,
yep.
the consumers have really, really accepted and adopted that. And I don't hear anybody talking about, oh, I want natural pearls instead. They're just, it's so, yeah, I mean, lab grown diamonds, it really kind of seems like over time, I know cultured pearls have been around for a lot longer, but over time, lab grown diamonds would, the consumers would just completely 100% accept them because they'll just be
The
undetectable by the naked eye and the price is
no-brainer.
just unbeatable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's interesting. Uh, I've done some analysis on this as well because it's like you know, you have to because it's interesting. Um, but during the same time as the introduction of cultured pearls, they also created synthetic sapphire, synthetic ruby,
Okay.
and those two were introduced to the market around the same time, 1880s, 1890s, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And the synthetic sapphire and ruby were very popular for 40, 50 years. And then what happened was people started to realize they could tell the difference visually.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, there was a select market that went, I can't do the synthetic sapphire, I can't do the synthetic ruby. It doesn't look right. It's
Right.
not, it doesn't look natural. And they
My
can tell.
friends will be able to tell. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just things like,
no, they can tell. Like some people
yeah.
just love rocks. I like people, especially people who buy colored stones. They do it because they
Hmm.
love rocks. So
Yeah.
if they see a rock and it doesn't enchant them as a natural gem that has like sparkly powers, it's
Hmm.
not the vibe. You know what I mean? And it needs to be
Yeah.
magical to them. And a synthetic doesn't have that magic for them. So they can feel it, they can see it. It's tangible to them. There's a difference. The diamonds, nobody can tell. That's the
Mm.
thing. It's like with the pearls. Without X-ray vision, you cannot tell
Right.
me if it's a natural
Yeah.
pearl or not. You don't have X-ray vision. You're not Superman. I'm sorry. It's not
Yeah.
happening. Like,
Yeah.
and with the same with the diamonds, I can't even with my microscope, all of my knowledge, all of my experience. You show me a natural triple X perfect cut stone, natural versus lab. I will never be able to tell you the difference without
Mm.
equipment. Can't.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
really
incredible.
really interesting to me to see that kind of come full circle, where that's what gemstones originally were. Is they were magic. I mean, when you're digging
Mhm.
in the ground and you dig up something that is harder than anything else that's in the environment around you, and it's bright and sparkly,
Yeah,
there's no way not to see some mysticism in that. And it's really interesting to me knowing that that was the original value in gemstones, was their magical properties.
yeah,
To to see that that's still a part of the industry, is that there are still folks that are coming in and letting the stones speak to them, or however.
truly. It's not quite as directly, not always. It's not usually as directly stated in that way, but
Mhm.
Hmm.
there's definitely a connection to natural gems that people have, and I can see it. When it's a very beautiful gemstone, um, and someone puts it on their finger, their eyes light up in a way that it's not about it being valuable. It's not about a value. It's not about that tangible worth. It's about something in there speaking to them that's different. It's
Mhm.
something
Hmm.
there that's connecting to their brain.
Mhm.
I don't
Hmm.
know if it's magic,
Well,
maybe.
I feel like now would be a good time to bring up, gems and diamonds in pop culture. Every interview we've had so far we've talked a little bit to the interviewee about what they do and how it how it's perceived by the media and how it's perceived by movie or TV show makers. Do you
Mhm.
feel like there's any kind of, Uncut Gems was just released, during the pandemic, or there was, of course, the movie Blood Diamond. I mean, do you feel like any of these movies or TV shows accurately portray what you see on a day-to-day basis or the market itself accurately?
So I watched Uncut Gems. I liked that movie a
Yes.
lot.
Yes.
It was a very good movie.
Very stressful.
I would, if very, it is, I was going to say. So there are people in the movie who I
Hmm.
know, who I've met.
Really?
Oh,
Yes, they
Wow.
used a lot of actual people from 47th Street in New York who are actually
Hmm.
dealers there. Um, in fact, one of the guys in the movie is one of the guys that I'm kind of referencing when I'm talking about that 20% that'll still do business with you
Hmm.
when you're burned. Um, I'm not going to name who it is, but um, point is, that was very accurate. It's a
Hmm.
very accurate representation of how deals go down, what kind of business happens in New York. I would say the anxiety is not as
Right.
accurate. I mean, there are certainly anxious moments in the industry, but unless you're a degenerate gambler and losing all of your
Hmm.
money to gambling, you're usually fine. I mean,
Hmm.
it's unusual for a dealer to get very deep underwater because I mean you always have inventory, you always have, you always have ways to build cash if you need it. So there's always something, there's always
Yeah.
something to sell. Um, so unless you're gambling or sometimes health problems can happen, but that's usually
Yeah.
unusual again because they're usually in New York. They have health insurance. It's not.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, health problems, do you see many people who, as we enter these kind of lifelong hobbies, lifelong collector bases, do you see stores? Is it a lot like yours where it was a mentorship that you then, moved on and now, own the store? Or do you see entire stores just selling out to a competitor where they say, I don't have anybody to follow my footsteps. I don't have anyone who I can pass the store on to. I'd like to just sell my entire inventory to my neighbor who,
You know,
does the same thing.
very sadly, I would say I see a lot of stores close,
Hmm.
which is a big bummer to me. I think it's a huge
Yeah.
tragedy when a successful store that could have been sold or given away or something
Yeah.
just gets closed. But on average, I would say more often what happens is that the employees end up buying the store,
Hmm.
or some other outside entity ends up buying the store. If that doesn't happen, usually there's a liquidation sale, and then yeah, ends up closing.
mhm.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
And the jewelry industry is interesting because it's dominated by such monsters. I mean, you're talking about De
yeah.
Beers and Riddles and how difficult is it to compete as an individual dealer? I mean, I know that like you watch GameStop collectibles and you're like, of course I can compete against those guys. They have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know that, how does that translate in the jewelry world?
Um, so it's usually not hard to have better prices than the big companies, as a small jeweler,
Okay.
if you're willing to work on a low margin.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to work on a low margin, and we are. We're very happy to do that,
Mhm.
especially with our lab diamonds.
Yeah.
But I would say that as a small jeweler, getting into this business is very, very difficult. It Especially if you don't already have a small team built. I mean, as an
Right.
individual person, most people try to do it alone for the most part, you know, or with one partner, one other person, and it's not achievable. It's really not. There's too much to do. There are too many specialties to have. There are too many things that you need to achieve in order to run a business well. Um, that you need more than two people.
Mhm.
So you need money. It's a pain in the ass, but it's easy to provide better service than the big companies. It's easy to provide a high quality product, and it's easy to undercut them if you're willing to work on a small margin. And I think that's what I've noticed, and that's where I've tried to attack the market.
Mhm.
And also a lot of people, I would say, Americans especially, have a drive to support small business.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them have a drive to support small business over big business generally. And that definitely is something that is, we've taken advantage of. We're a small family business. We mention that not often, but we do. Um, you know, enough to where people know it and want to support us over Walmart.
Well, and I've
Yeah.
watched your lives, and you do a ton of business in lab
Yeah.
grown diamonds. I mean, I
Oh my
can't
God.
speak for
Yeah.
numbers, but like there's definitely the interaction and definitely the purchasing going on to justify doing it. It's impressive to see what kind
Crazy.
of reaction you've had. Is that a recent thing, or has that been going on since you've been on TikTok?
So I think we did our first live sale in January of this year. And it was just to clear out some estate jewelry. And I was selling it very close to cost. Like I was truly just getting rid of it. It was stuff I had for 2 years plus.
Yeah.
So dead inventory to me. I want it gone. And mind
Hmm.
you, it's stuff that hasn't been on our website. So it was only really shown locally.
They can't buy
And
it
I
if
was,
you can list it. Yeah.
yeah, I would have sold if I listed it, but it was me alone for the majority of last year. So I was like, whatever. I don't have time for this. So we closed it out, and I think first sale we sold like $90,000 of jewelry. We didn't make we probably made 5 grand or something like 6 grand on the
Hmm.
whole thing. But after shipping, nothing. Like we just got our money
Yeah.
back, which is fine again. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not making any money here, but I just sold almost 100K in a
Yep.
live.
Hmm.
And it clicked. It was up for 6 hours, I think 5 or 6 hours. So it was a long day, but still, like that clicked, and I was like, wait, what if I sell lab grown? So we did another estate sale, and then the lab sale, and our first lab sale, we did I think 75,000, 80,000 in sales, and heavily discounted. It was a great price. We were closing out overstock, but still, decent margin. I think we made 15,000 on that sale in a
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just want to say I really appreciate your honesty, Jack, because most of the times when you talk to a dealer, they'll talk in generalities, but they don't give you the actual because silver
Yeah,
collectors they know that everybody's making a margin on everything. It's not a secret. But I really appreciate you being honest about what the prices are because I find it really fascinating to see what kind of margin there is, and you have to sell 100,000 because when you consider the overhead
Yeah.
of your 3, 4 employees, and you have a physical store, and
yeah.
you have to feed yourself and your family and the inventory and everything else. I mean, it really, it's not as if you see a lot of jewelry and watch guys do the bling thing, and I like that you don't do that and show what the nitty gritty of the business really is.
I mean, I think that's part of, in my mind, the teaching.
Yep.
Because
Hmm.
for me, when I'm thinking of mentoring people, I need them to understand the different viable business methods. And I'm doing two of the big ones in my TikTok, which one of them is flipping, discovering and flipping rare things. That's one aspect. That's the rare hunter. And the other one is
Hmm.
the low margin flip it, get your stuff
Yeah.
sold, get the customer. Doesn't matter if you're not making a bunch of money, make the money, get it done.
Yep.
And those are two very, very important aspects of this industry. And I mean, I'm going to be adding another aspect of it, which is very soon, which is the buying over the counter, because we're
Hmm.
expanding next door. So we're going to do a lot more buying videos.
Oh, that's great.
Cool.
Um, and that's the third aspect of this business that really allows people to, there's like a bread and butter generator where it like pays all your bills.
Hmm.
Hmm.
The scrap metal purchasing, the lab grown diamonds, those cover all your well, the lab grown is better than that. The scrap gold pays all your bills, covers everything, and then the lab grown is extra.
And I think that trend is really common among dealers. I mean, a lot of dealers will say, all of my stuff under whatever that price point is, 100 or $500, is me keeping the doors open, and
Yep.
everything above that is where I will make my profit on. Because it costs a lot to keep the doors open in any business where you're
Yeah.
trying to sell collectibles to folks, or jewelry for that matter.
Yeah. No, our overheads. We just hired another employee. Yeah, it's bad. Hold on. If you want, hold on. I'll give you a number. I'll give you a ballpark. Every month we're between 38 and 46,000.
Wow. And
Yeah.
is that just
Yeah.
payroll, or is that
That's
general over?
that's that's rent, insurance, all employees. No personal payout though. That's just employees
Wow.
Hmm.
and all overhead, electricity, internet. blah blah blah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not including inventory purchasing, just the
Yeah.
actual builds.
Right. Right.
Inventory purchases add another 350,000 or something ridiculous. Like,
That's crazy. Well, do you want to take just a moment and tell everybody listening where the best place is to find you and see your content? Because I've been a fan since I started watching it. I think that it is a
likewise.
fascinating insight into an industry that is deeply gate kept by most of the dealers that do content on them in order to maintain the mystique of its jewelry. It's
Hmm.
so valuable. I can't tell you everything type of
I
attitude.
hate that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hate that. Like, it's so much more exciting and fun to like really be transparent in this industry and connect with your audience,
Mhm.
and really like let them know what the reality is. Because when people see reality, they can feel that it's true. And when
Hmm.
they see that even if you're making good content and, you're just flubbing the numbers a little bit, people can feel it.
Yeah.
And you lose authenticity, I think. And that said, you can find us on TikTok, Mureta and Co.
Yeah.
MURETAANDCO. And also Instagram, same handle,
Yeah.
MURETAANDCO.
Yeah. I saw
Um,
you're starting to pick up big on Instagram. You seem to be putting together some
yeah,
there. Yeah.
One of our employees has been doing more posting. I hate Instagram, so I don't do anything on there. But she's been doing more posting on there, and yeah, we've been growing a little bit, up to 12,000 followers, I think.
Oh,
We
wow. That's great.
also have a website, MuretaandCo.com, where you can buy stuff if you'd like.